Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Our Ventura. I'm your host, Joshua Lane. Our guest today is Gabriel, a Lyme Disease Awareness Educator who has been a guest before on our show. And her information has been so interesting and so valuable that I thought we should have her back on again, because Annie has some new information to offer us. Annie, thanks for being on our show.
Oh, thank you, Josh.
No, it's my pleasure to have you on the show. Now, recently, you had an episode of illness that occurred as a result of, is it tick infestation? Am I correct?
Well, it was a combination of ticks, fleas, and sand lice.
Okay, and this ended up coming into your apartment, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. And
what brought that in?
Well, as we spoke of before, Lyme disease is an insidious, misunderstood, systemic bacterial infection for which there is no cure at this point.
Right.
If a person's lucky enough to catch it in the first few days or week with the antibiotics, they're pretty much home free. But most people don't have that luxury because it's so misunderstood, not even hardly discussed in the California medical school curriculum. It's brushed over like, oh, it's just another, insect bite. No, it's not. It's something that, if ignored, will lay dormant in your body until something comes along to provoke it. Car accidents are a big deal. Any kind of injury, even surgeries, even major dental work will bring something out of dormancy.
So you've had Lyme disease now for how long?
Oh gosh, I can't even put a number on it, but we're going into, I'm pushing close to 20 years. I would say about 8 years with a diagnosis and 12 years without. That's how long it took me to get a diagnosis.
So for the first 12 years, you were just suffering, and the physicians were unable to determine what the origin of the problem was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a merry-go-round. You just go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. Get treated equally badly and ignored, and they love chalking it up to menopause. That's like their favorite thing when they don't know what to do.
Right.
And I'm dying, and they're taking tests and blood work and finding bacterial counts through the roof. How can that be hormonally related? You tell me. But, the law, I have a story, I lecture, I counsel people. My nickname is one of the longest surviving Lyme patients in California. In Southern California, that's kind of like my nickname.
Now, when you were on our show, last time, you said that Lyme disease originally came from Old Lyme, Connecticut, about 40 years ago?
Yes, it was in the early 70s when it was, when this particular strain started out reaching the mainland of Old Lyme, Connecticut from Plum Island, which is a real hop, skip, and a jump, a little island government installation that were doing biogerm warfare experimentation.
Oh dear.
Post-World War II and post-Vietnam. And something happened in the early 70s. I guess they can trace it back to migratory birds bringing whatever happened, the mutations that happened on the island, bringing it to the mainland and having the first incident. The whole town of Old Lyme, Connecticut was affected at that point. Seniors to babies all had these same symptoms, and they couldn't put their finger on it. So that's when they finally discovered that it was a BB bacteria, is what they call it. That was why they called it Lyme disease, Lyme, coming from the name of the city where the first outbreak occurred.
Does anyone have a number of potential people who have been infected with Lyme disease?
Oh yeah, the numbers are staggering. They are not being accurately reported, and unfortunately it takes so long for a person to get a real diagnosis. There's no real test out there for it, a direct test. The tests that are available are erroneous with a very high percentage of false negatives. And then the other thing is that there's no real medication targeted for it, like, oh, here, you have this, take this. No, I've been a human guinea pig for the last 20 years and gladly accept that title with pride, because I don't know how many times I've been near death, but I I document everything. I've documented all of my experiments, what I've tried, what works, what doesn't, what I could weed out, what to do, and I've kind of put that onto a bubble now, being called a Lyme literate health coach, right, which is a new thing as well. Back to your question. What happened was I was in remission. You know, you can get into remission, and that's the thing I help people do. I tell them, you know, if you've had chronic Lyme, not to be negative, but there's no way to just be cured. But right, you can have a life. You can get into remission. And I put together a layman's protocol for wellness that just a small part of it is actual pharmaceuticals. The rest of it is all kinds of other integrative modalities that a person has to put together. If you do this, 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 and this, and do it consistently, the results are duplicatable. You can have some kind of life in spite of this.
Right.
The people that stick to mainstream medicine, just take medication.
Yes.
They are the ones that fare the worst because, yes, the medication may be targeting the bacteria, but the bacteria mutates. Yes, they may be getting enough antibiotics or IVs or whatever they get, but that's also destroying a lot of their cleansing organs, liver, spleen. The kidneys are affected. They're finding out, unfortunately, a lot of times after the people die from some complication in the autopsy, they're labeling it Lyme-related something.
Wow.
Heart failure, kidney failure, early Alzheimer's. It's not Alzheimer's at all. It's the infection going to the brain and causing the person to go mad. So I thought I was home free, right? I'm in remission, I'm happy, I'm doing the far infrared sauna, and that's really the number one thing that's turned my life around this time. However, I didn't plan on this. This is a phenomenon that I don't think anybody thinks about.
Yeah, so this obviously didn't plan this.
No.
So what? Someone brought a dog into the apartment?
No. What happened was I had to have someone come as a roommate in the extra room, and supposedly to help with finances and, you know, cut the costs.
Sure.
And I even discussed this with the person. I was like, look, here's my Lyme work, here's what happens, here's my disease. Mm-hmm. I have to be cautious. Sorry you can't bring your pet, but you know, even though you're not bringing your pet, there's something called post-host infestation.
Could you please repeat that?
Post-host infestation. Mm-hmm. What that is normally, you know, people have pets. Even though they say, oh, my pets don't have fleas or ticks, they do. You just don't see them. And they're managed because these pests need a host. The host is the pet.
Right.
Well, this is scientific. I'm not making this up.
Okay.
Within about 7 to 10 days after there's no host, let's say you remove the pet, but the belongings are still there that the pet was running around on, mm-hmm. that's when an infestation occurs. Well, the stuff was not sprayed before it was brought in, and within 10 days, literally, the place exploded in an infestation of fleas, ticks, mm-hmm. and sand lice mm-hmm. We live in a town with a beach.
Right.
These are things nobody thinks about, especially people who don't even know about the disease in the first place. Well, even though I was super cautious, and even though that it still happened, within 10 days, it exploded. The place was infested. I got over 100 bites. Because I already have systemic bacterials that mutate and are in my system up to here mm-hmm.
that
I manage, mm-hmm. those bites from the various insects pushed me over the limit. It pushed the bacterial count over the limit. It pushed my immune system to shut down. And I was in harm's way since the last time we did the show, and now I have almost died again. What happened was my brain, it takes over your system, but my brain swelled. It was encephalopathy. They biopsied one of the ticks that got into the back of my skull, uh-huh. and of course it had bacteria, and that was what caused the brain swell. And for 2 weeks, my mom had to come and literally stay with me, watch me like a hawk, because if I went into the coma again, that would have been it. Who would I call?
So, Annie, you had to go to the emergency room?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this was huge. And I thought, you know what? I'm a positive thinker. Yes, it was scary. Yes, it was hideous. The health department, you know, I mean, it was an infestation. It had to be fumigated. We had to leave. It was just awful. But I'm sitting here to tell you that the people that already have the disease, that don't even know they have the disease, they're in harm's way. The people that have the disease and know they have the disease and still be careful about this, they can still be bitten, and they can still go right back out of remission into a full-blown relapse. And this is why the people are dropping like flies.
May I ask you, was the health department helpful here in Ventura? Were they knowledgeable?
Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, wonderful. So it was we nipped it in the bud.
And what about the hospital you went to for emergency room? Did they have a sense of it? Were they helpful? Okay. That's a fair answer.
No,
okay.
No. That's why if you're lucky enough to get a doctor that was schooled on the East Coast, they are Lyme literate. They do include that into their basic curriculum for medical school. If you're not, and they're not taught this, and they don't know about it or hear about it, or they're not forced to learn about it, it's not their fault. I used to be mad at the doctors. It's not even their fault. They're not being taught.
Right.
So if they're not being taught, how are they going to fix it? So I have the utmost respect for the doctors. What I try and do now is try and ask if they could use my help to fill them in the blanks or even get them excited about learning more. And then I hook them up with other Lyme literate doctors.
Now, what medications?
So they can learn if they're willing.
What medications did you mention to me that you felt was very helpful for you, that has recently changed patent or changed manufacturer? What medication was that?
That is Biaxin XL. That's the extended, it just, it extends through your system throughout the day.
So you feel this is valuable for Lyme disease patients in general?
I believe it is.
Okay.
For me personally, it's the only game in town. I am allergic to all generic compounds. Therefore, this is not a generic compound. It hasn't been, and it's been around. And when I've ran the gamut, like I said, a human guinea pig, I tried everything under the sun, including IV antibiotics, including they put a PICC line in my heart and left it there for months and months.
Did the IV antibiotics help?
Oh my God! It was like before I knew any better. If I had my druthers now, I would say no. I'll go another route.
Okay.
At the time where I had to do this because I was still learning myself, I knew I wasn't going to let a bite the size of a grain of pepper put me in the grave, and I have never lost that passion.
Okay.
Ever, for searching and digging and personally trying things and documenting things, and
And that medication, could you mention it once again?
It's Biaxin XL.
Is that medication available?
No, they've taken it off. I did my research. I was I'm a published writer, so, and I was also an investigative journalist back in the day. So I started on my investigation. I left no stone unturned trying to find how I can still get this medication. Like I said before, 90% of my wellness is linked to doing an integrative approach of all kinds of things.
Sure.
If somebody were to watch me in my day, they would see it's not as simple as, oh, hi, take these medicine and go rest. No, you have to do things all day long, every day. The green juicing, the far infrared sauna,
right.
Special kind of lymphatic massage,
Sure.
lymphatic movement in general.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, and I was in remission, a great remission for about 4 years. I was back active in the industry, doing things, being a viable person. I wasn't heavy again, the weight went away.
And the weight is mostly
grew.
an allergic response. Is that it? You feel just
No,
like
it's
algae weight?
systemic candida.
Systemic candida.
Yes,
right.
it's fungus. It's a fungal overgrowth
Right.
from head to toe, and it clouds your thinking sometimes.
Right.
It's like 60 pounds of toxic bloat that I'm walking around with. And when people meet me, I see their eyes because they saw me before, and now they see me, and they look, and they're like, oh, you could read their mind. What happened to you? Boy, you've let yourself go. And I feel like walking around with a sign going, I've got Lyme disease.
Right.
And my body is poison.
Annie, this has been remarkable. Can you please give us a phone number so people can contact you for Lyme disease information?
What I'll do is give out my email address if you don't mind.
Sure, surely.
It's LymeDiseaseCoach@AOL.com. And my website is LymeDiseaseAngels.org.
Thank you.
That would be a good way.
Annie, Gabriel, thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Our Ventura. Our guest has been Annie Gabriel. Bye-bye.